Yeah. So yesterday we started looking into the data provider. Do you have any doubts, guys, so far? So please practice, guys, and let me know if you have any doubts. Okay. So today we'll be discussing about like how do we exactly use this data provider along with the different set of return types. Okay. So out of the return types that we have here is like we have two-dimensional arrays that we can return, single dimensional, and then we can return the iterator also. Iterator, and it can be like iterator of list or iterator of list. Okay. So basically, we are going to use this two-dimensional arrays. Okay. So that's like I'll just give examples like how do we exactly use them in terms of like using the data provider. So for this, I'm going to create a separate package for this. I'll just name it as like Selenium. Selenium data provider. I'm going to create a class data provider example. So let's look into this data provider. How do we exactly use it? Okay. So to define a data provider, we have to use annotation data provider. Okay. So this data provider will help you to identify that particular method as like a data provider. Data provider in the sense like providing some data to something like if you want to execute some set of test cases, there it's going to provide the data. Okay. So here I'm going to use public void DP. I'll use the shortcuts here. So what we discuss about like we want to return some data in terms of like two-dimensional array. Okay. So here what I'm going to do is like I'll simply write what we are trying to do is like we want to return the data, right? So return the data in the form of like two-dimensional. So for this, I'm going to use two-dimensional array. And what is the size? So here size is like 2. Okay. So this is one way of like yesterday we looked at it. How do we exactly use this data provider in this fashion? Okay. But today we'll look into it in a different way. So how do we return it? Directly we are going to use these things. Okay. So I'm going to add like admin down here, admin 1, 2, 3. This is one set. The other set would be like admin 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So what we are returning now? We are returning the data. So we have to return this. So now if you want to read this data, so we can use annotation. See how many sets of data we have? 2 sets of data. One is one row, 1 column, like 1 row, 2 column, and 2 row, 2 columns. Okay. So here we want to read the data. How do we read it now? Read test data. So here, what I'm trying to do is like I'll be using the data providers. Okay. So for this, we need to have the name of this data provider, right? So I'm going to give it as like a DP. Now what it does is like, see, it's going to return you the object. So object array, okay? Two-dimensional array object. So now we want to read the data. So how do we read it? In this annotation, we have to give the data provider name. Okay. So name of the data provider. So I'm giving the name of the data provider and number of arguments that we have. See, one here, how many values are the 2 sets of data is that? Inside that we have a 1 row, 2 column, 1 row, 2 column. So here we have like, how many number of columns that we have in this data provider, those many number of parameters that we have to supply. Okay. So here you can see, I'm just giving as the union. uname and string password. Okay. So now if I go and try to get the names, username is uname. So as we discussed, like automatically what it does is like it's going to do the iterations. Okay. So we need not to worry about the iterations, number of iterations that we like, number of columns that we have over there and iterations we need to follow. So we need not to worry about it. So when I go and run this, we see that two sets of data will be printed here. You can see username, password, username, password. Okay. So I'll do one thing. I'll just try to. Yeah. So here I just want to have this count displayed. Okay. I'm just using this. I'll give so when I go and execute this, so what you see is like, see iteration one, iteration two. Okay, so that we are getting as part of this. Now, how do we implement this now? So how do we get this data? So we got the data here. Okay, so here I'm going to take the example. I'll take this complete set. Just we want to confirm that, right? So what is the data that we are getting? I'm going to go here and just paste it here. Those declaration. So it's going to throw this declaration. Right click, run as. So now you see we are getting username and password. Okay, so from where we are getting this username and password? So we are getting it from this data provider. Okay, so this is not required, just to show you that I was explaining this. Now run as test engine. Okay, so it will take admin 1, 2, 3. Now you can see that it's going to check for the particular login. Okay, so first one is like logging in, and as we return this logic, if this element is like not found, then it's going to throw this like yeah. If it is displayed, invalid credentials displayed, login failed. It is not displayed, it's going to close this. Okay, so it will just wait for that element for the given number of seconds. Like I'll just reduce this one, so I'll make it 10 seconds so that it will be easy for us to, and it log in successfully. Okay, so it will close now. Wait for 5 seconds and close it. So here it is like invalid credentials, so it will immediately close it. admin 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is like one set of thing that we can use it. So what I will do is like I'll try to give you other examples also. So example 2. So data provider. So this just I'm going to remove it. Otherwise I'll just yeah, let me just. So here I'm going to put only single dimensional array. Okay, so single dimensional array. So how do we get this value single dimensional array? Is like now if I have only one username. Okay, so here what I'm trying to do is like I'm going to supply this single dimensional array. So when I go here, only your requirement is like to get a single dimensional array. So that is also possible. See here what it does is like it's going to give you the single dimensional array, admin name, admin, and admin 1 to 3. Okay. So two-dimensional array is like we are going to give two-dimensional arrays. So this is like other example. This is a return type of it is like it's going to return only the single dimension. So I'm going to create another data provider with different set of data. Okay. So here, so DP, I'll just name it as like single dip. Okay. So here, name it as like single DM. Okay. So here, iterator. So here I am going to get the iterator. See, now what I am trying to do is like I want to return some like in the form of like a iterator. Okay. So for example, now we see what I'm going to do is like I create list of objects. Okay. List of objects. Data is equals to new array list. So in this case, see in this case, what I'm trying to do is like I want to return some data. Okay. So here I'll put void. Okay, let me just do it in this way. Now, what I'm going to do is like data dot add. So here I'm going to add like new object of some data, admin, comma. Oh, sorry, this is like only one thing that we can add. It's like an object, okay? So object of no, sorry, data dot add. So here I'm going to add the new value of it, okay? So what is that I want to add? I want to add, like for example, I want to take the string. So here I can just I'll show you like how do we exactly use it, okay? So string of admin. So I'm trying to add these details now. Admin 1 2 3, admin 1 2 3 4. Okay, some data. Now it's like if I try to return this list of string, okay? So I'll go and return it list of strings. So I'll be adding return type. So what type of data it's going to accept is like now here I'm going to put it is like data iterator. Okay. So for this, like whichever data provider that you want to use, okay, whichever data provider that I want to use and whichever data that you want to read, that we have to give it here, like no data provider and its name. Now I'm going to give the username. So what is that? What is the return type that we are getting here is like we are getting list of objects. Okay. So here, how do I get it now? Dot get, and we have to give the index. Otherwise, we have to use the for loop. Okay. So for loop is nothing but just in case if you want to get the data from the string, like whatever you want to get. So you have to give this. Like we are returning the list, right? So from list, how do we get the data? We are going to get it like this. Okay. So yes, so I'm saying here, yes. So when I go and try to execute this, so it's going to return me the error. Okay. What is that error? Is like it's have the return types. Okay. Some type of return types. It will only accept C. What are the return types data provider will accept is like object two-dimensional array, object single-dimensional, object iterator object of array, or iterator object. Okay, so iterator object. So here, if you add anything like list of iterator, whatever you want to add, you can add it. But the thing is like return type should be iterator of object. Iterator of object. Okay, we can take strings also and tell you. So in this case, if you want to return this list, okay, return this list, data, we have to use data dot iterate. Okay, so data dot iterate. So it is like iterator of strings because we have used the strings, right? So it is asking me to take this one. So now what is the type that we are using here? This is like, it is kind of like a list of strings. List of strings. So, but what is that return type it is returning? It is returning return type iterator string. So we have to use iterator string. Okay, so here we cannot use this for loop. Now what we have to use is like we have to use while loop because how do we use the iterator? We use the iterator in this way. Okay, so you name dot as next. If we have that as next, then we are going to print the union dot next. Okay, so what it does is like it's going to return me this file. Okay, so return type, second return type is like first return type. We have looked into this like two-dimensional array, and sorry, like second return type is like we looked into the object array. That's nothing but only one object at a time. And third is like we are looking into the iterator string. Okay, so that's nothing but iterator of object. We can give the object also here. So if you want to convert it, you can convert it. Okay, so how do we convert this one? Now you see. Okay, let me just check with the strings. Okay, first we will pull out this data from this iterator. Go and execute this. What is that it is showing? Data provider mismatch has no parameters defined but has annotation variable. Data provider we have provided and we are giving the data. Let me check. Okay, maybe. Okay, so the thing is like I have to directly use this argument. Okay, let me just so it internally it will look into that. Has no parameters defined. Oh, sorry. So here we have defined the parameters here, but still read test type, data provider, and we are providing the DP. Iterator of strings because we are giving this iterator. Dot next. If I give the next, so if it is there, it will go and return the value. Data provider mismatch. Single dim object return. Data provider name. Read test data. Iterator of string. So even we can use like this also. Let me just check it. So why it is throwing. Even if we give this string, new name is of type, cannot iterate this one. So this is fine. So we are just trying to get the data, okay? So why we should have this name, but if it has like as next value, it is like as simple as like we are getting the data from the iterator. Okay, iterator that we already looked into it, right? Please look into the previous videos, guys, in the collections that we have discussed about like iterator. So uname dot next. So this I want to run. So let me just run it. So why it is throwing error? Let's check that. So it says like parameters, data provider, mismatcher. It's not matching that content. Okay. So whatever we are trying to take it as like a parameter, right? So it's not matching. So where do we get exception exactly? So this is the exception it is throwing, and we go and see where that exception is returning. Method. This is a method and argument that we are supplying. So you can see arguments, it is getting like admin one at a time. New string. We got this. If I take the list of strings, then it doesn't give list of strings. Okay. So where did I made the mistake is like I just made like I'm trying to use that. So here I'm just checking it, guys. So what is that actually I did? So iterator that everything is working fine. List of iterator that I give. So here I'm adding the parameters, that is fine. This is also the object that I have created, and I'm returning that object. Not cause an error, but let me just take this one as like a otherwise only string. If I give this one, but this is not returning any string here. Okay, so it's returning a iterator. If we are returning the iterator, then we have to take it as like a iterator. Let's see that if it's going to execute this or not. Okay, so otherwise we can look into the documentation how this works exactly. Yeah, sorry. So we need not to use this iterator. So only thing is like I made a mistake here, like I should not use that one as like a iterator. And in this iterator, you can see that it is returning the iterator, but directly we are passing it, we are considering it as like a data.iterator. Already it is sending the iterator back. Okay. So in this case, what we are trying to do is like I have just used the iterator of string and I'm trying to retrieve the data. Already it is returning the data.iterator. Okay. So this is nothing but it is grouping like it is sending me the data in the form of strings. Okay. But what I tried to do is like I tried to put the iterator. So that is the reason why it was throwing the error. But now you see that I'm just using this single string and just getting the data. Okay. So this is one type of like kind of a data provider. So this is like third type. Okay. So iterator of strings. So as you're talking about like strings, do we need to take only strings? No, we can accept anything here. For example, if you want to have the different set of data. Okay. So let me show you. I'll be taking it as like an object. Okay, not only I want to consider strings, I want to consider numerics also. Numerics and special character, numerics and in terms of like, putting this, what we say, 0.5 F So new object. So here I need to add the new integer. It should, okay, it's not accepting this object actually. So the constructor object, is it saying like constructor object is undefined? So here I'll consider it as like an object. But it should accept it, new object. Okay, let me just check with only one type at a time. So it's like only adding the object here. Okay, so can add, so new of admin. If I give admin, it is not accepting. Okay, so let me take it as like a string. So generally we'll consider this object actually. So I'll look into this guy. So it should allow me to add these values. Okay, so let me undo everything. But in case here, if you want to have this, like, generally we don't use objects here, but if you want to add like, multiple things in that, in certain cases, like, if you want to, okay, so I'm sorry for this guys. I'll just show you like how do we do it. I'm going to add the object here. Okay, so here I'm going to add the integer. So object itself will not come into the picture directly. So we have to use the values like this. Okay, so new integer, I'm sorry for that. So yeah, float. Now you see we can add the different types of data types. Okay, so object itself will not directly come into the picture when you are trying to add this values. Okay, now we are returning this, so it's kind of like an object, it's not a string. Okay, so when you try to, you are returning the string, you are you are returning the object, and you are treating them as like a string. So here it should throw the error. Okay, because like object strings cannot be converted into the numeric. So here you see it's like reading data provider mismatch. It says like, you are passing it as like object and you are taking it as like a string. So in that case, it will throw the error. When you say object, you have to return the object and you have to catch them as like object. Now you don't get any error here because object will consider everything. Okay, admin 2335.6. Okay, so if you want to pass any parameters as like, different integers or float values, then we have to use this object. Okay, so but generally most of the times we are going to read the data from the Excel file with the help of only the objects. Okay, and in terms of object, I mean to say that we generally use that string itself. So object is nothing but, see, the object is the parent class of all the classes in Java. So here what we are trying to do is like, if something is like, if you want to consider it as an object, okay, it is an integer, it can be float, it can be string, it can be anything. So in that case, what we do is like, we are going to call it as like an object. So if you are specifying list of strings here, so what it does is like, it will only accept the list of strings here. Okay, so it will not accept anything else. See, it is throwing the error here. So when you try to add this, so now if you make it as like a string, it can be anything, 23 or whatever you want to add, but you have to put in the double quotes. Okay, so now you see, if you make this one as like a string, it doesn't throw any error. Okay, though it is an object here, because it is parent class of string. So we don't get any error here. Admin 123 or 35.6. So if it is like, if you specifically wants to capture in terms of like the strings, then you can capture it. Okay, so this is like one way. So I mean, like, what we discuss is like two-dimensional array, single-dimensional array. After that, we are discussing about an iterator. Now we'll be discussing about like another thing is like now string of iterators. Okay, iterator array. So here we are going to put like this. Now it's like, now we cannot directly add it. So how do we add it now? We have to give the indexing. Okay, data So what we are trying to do is like, now we are going to add it. Okay. Dot add new. So otherwise, what we can do is like, I'll just try to remove this. I'll do it in a simple way. So first is like what we have. This is like a data. So I want to create a string here. String array is equals to yes, a string of some three values. Okay. So here s of 0 is equals to, so its return type we need to, okay. So DP, I'm going to name it as like data provider iterator. The data provider iterator of this time. Okay, data.add. Yes. Okay, so that's nothing but we have like, this is a string of arrays, right? So how do we add it? Like we are just creating the strings in that strings, that string array. In that string array, I'm going to add these values. Okay. So after that, I'm going to return that. So I'm adding all of them and I'm going to return it as like a string array. So here what I have to do is like I've just put, I need to put it as like a string of arrays. So here I'm going to take the iterator. So we are getting values in the form of like a string, right? So string username, new name. So here you have to give username. Okay, so now you go and execute this. So we're getting all the values. So admin 1 2 3 3 4 6. So here it is little different. Like list of strings that we are trying to add the list of strings. Here also we can just create the new string and just we can create like string s is equals to new string and add the admin. After that you can add data.add. So that string. But here what we are trying to do is like here is like list of string. Here is like list of string arrays. Okay, list of string array. So here also if you want to, like again, if you add this two-dimensional arrays, so this much complex we don't use, only two-dimensional arrays that we are going to use. Just I want to show you like this will also be accepted. Just putting this two. Okay. To get the values from it, what we need to do is like that is equals to 0, is less than new name dot length and I plus plus is two-dimensional arrays. So two-dimensional arrays for this what we have to do is like we have to use this method. J is equals to 0. J is less than data of I dot new name, sorry, new name dot length J plus plus. So this is like we are trying to get the data in the form of like two-dimensional arrays. I'll just cut it here. I'm going to paste it. So it should be uname of I and J because we have like two things, two values here, right? So if you have one value directly, we can achieve that using the single dimensional array. Like for loop, single for loop. So now also it is returning the values. Okay. So this is also possible. We can just use this single dimension, or we can use the like no multi-dimensional. Okay. So I'll put it like simple. I just want to show you like how does it exactly handles this return types. Okay. Data provider return types. I'll just remove this. Username. Here we are putting the username. So here also directly what we are trying to do is like we are trying to add it. Okay. So this is other way, and you can add like data.add. And if you want to add like new string, of okay. So here is a string array that we need to put here. Let me take this. Okay. So I'll try to copy paste this. So this is like other way. Okay. So you can use any of this either ways we can use. Okay. So this is not required. Directly we are adding it, right? So this is not required. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 5. Now you see. So when I go and execute this, we'll get the same values. Just that you need to add this single dimensional array. Okay. So here you see we are getting the values. So these are the 4 approaches, right? First is like I already used like 2-dimensional arrays here. So, and also I showed you example here in this case, like how do we exactly read the data from this 2-dimensional arrays. Okay. So generally that we are going to use this one. Okay. We are going to use this one. So this is like a number of ways that we can handle this data provider. Single dimensional object, single dimensional array object, and here is like list of iterators that we can send and list of string arrays, like whatever object. It can be a object here also. Okay, so it shouldn't be like any string. So if you want to handle like different set of data, that we can use this one. Now we are going to see one example. How do we read now? How do we make this one as like a data driven testing? Okay, so just that we are going to add now Excel file, and we are going to read the Excel file using the data provider, and data provider will be passing data to this particular test. Now we are not going to, yeah.
I have one question, that how we will use this data provided in real time, that
Yes.
iterations and all.
That is what now we are going to discuss. Okay. So now so far we have hard coded these values, right? Now we are going to read the data from the Excel file. Okay. So here I'm going to create a separate class. So I'll read. We'll call it as like data driven testing. Okay. Now observe carefully. We are going to handle this data driven testing. So first of all, we need to have this file wherein we can read the data. So I'm going to create a folder. Test data. So inside the test data, I'm going to this properties. Under this test data and under this test data folder, I'm going to create Excel file. Login details. Okay. Here I'm using username. So admin 1, 2, 3. So here admin 3, 4, 5. Okay, we have this test data. I'm naming this sheet as like a login. What is the file name? File name is like login details. Okay, so I'll just copy this location. I'm coming here. First of all, what we have to do is like, see, I'll just explain even what are the steps that we have to perform. Okay. First, that we have a Excel file. Okay. So this is an Excel file, and this Excel file should be first. We have to read the data from this Excel file. Okay. So what are the steps here? We are going to do is like, we are going to create an Excel file. Okay. So add data. So we have added the data. Now what we need to do is like, we need to read data from Excel file. For that, what are the things that we have to add is like, we have to have the POI Apache libraries. Okay. So Apache libraries that we should have. So let's check we have Apache library or not. So here we have already added this Apache library because we looked into the examples of reading data from the Excel file, right? So here we have like file handling. So we are reading from the Excel file. Okay. So now I'm going to write a piece of a code. So first, to read the Excel file, we need to get the location of that file. Okay. For that, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to take it as like a string value, so file path. So what is that location that we have? This is the location. Okay. So what is the file name? Login details dot xlsx. Okay. Seems that it is very lengthy, right? So what we can do is like, we can just go ahead and Ashok IT. So where this project located? So it is located in Ashok IT. So here I'm going to just put as it on. So it is not accepting this. So we have to give the forward slash. Okay. So before this, I want to check whether that file is coming from that location or not. Okay. I want to just check the location. So for this, I'm going to add just read data from Excel file. File path. Okay. So we confirm whether that file is like file path are we printing properly or not. It's not. Data provider. If this is not accepted, you need not to worry. So what we can do is like, so we have to just add a thing is like system dot get property, and you can add like user dot tr. So it will take you the current location. Okay. So then again you can append the file path. So to get the file path location. See from where we are getting it. So okay. Seems like it is till this point, it is considering it as like a file path. Let me just take it as like a okay. So test data we can put, otherwise we can put double slash here. This will also be accepted. So we should get the file path. Okay. Yeah, we are getting the file path here. You see, it is located in this location. Okay. So you can see this is nothing but test data file path. So we got this test data file path, and if you want to confirm this is like a kind of file path that we have. So here you can say file path is equals to Let's file path. Okay, so we got the file path here. So to check it, if file dot so if this is like a file, right? So what we can do is like we can just create a file here. File is equals to here. I'm going to create a file path. To check if it is that if that is a file or not. Okay, is file. Okay, so if it is available, then we'll go and try to add this rest of the code. Okay. Now it's like we got a file path, and so if this is a file, so I'll just try to check if this is a file or not. Okay, so it will return me a true. If it is a file, it will return me a true. See what it is returning? It is returning true. At location, it is available in that location. Now, first thing what we have to do when we want to read the data from the Excel file, what we have to do? We have to add the workbook. Okay, so we have to create object for the workbook. Then after we have to create object for the sheet. Then after we have to create object for the row. Then after we have to create object for the cells. Before that, after getting this sheet that I want to get the number of row, that is nothing but row count. After that, we are going to get the column count based on the row. Okay, so this is the sequence that we have to follow. And there are like two things. Okay, file input stream and output stream. Okay, if you want to read data from the file, we have to use input stream. If you want to write data to that particular file, then we have to use the output stream. Okay, so here file input stream that we are going to use to read the data. Okay, so here I'm going to create an object. First we have got the file location. Then we are going to create object for this file input stream. I'll come here and I'll try to put it like file input stream fs is equals to. So initially I'm just creating it as like a null. I'm just taking it as like static. Okay, so that I can use across the file. Now, what I'm going to do is like first I'm going to use fs is equals to. I have got the file right now. I have to open that file to read it. File put stream and I'm giving the file. Okay, this is fine. So it's going to return me the exception because if that file is not available, it's going to throw file not found exception. While it last like I'm just taking the parent exception so that we can handle it. Okay. Now what is that I need to do? I have to create the SSF workbook. Okay. So workbook object I need to create. So Excel file, what we have like Excel file is kind of like a group of things that is considered as part of like a object. Okay, so now you see that we have workbook. Inside that workbook we have sheet. Inside that sheet we have rows. Inside that rows we have cell values. Okay, so for this what I need to do is like I need to create object for this SSF workbook. And what is that you want to read now? See what is the exact thing that we have inside this workbook is like that attached not a source is not attached here. I'm just trying to attach the source. It's found, that is fine. Otherwise we need to check for that. Boy bin is there. We'll try to see if that source is available. That source is not available. External file. Let me just go to this. Okay, let me check it a little later, guys. So I think it is not available here. Okay. So what it does is like it will create the object now. Okay. So the constructor like SSF workbook constructor, what it has like, it will accept the parameters. What are the parameters that we have is like, it should accept the file input stream. Okay. So I'm just passing it as like file input stream. Now I'll be creating SSF sheet. Okay. Sheet is equals to WB dot get sheet. Okay. So get sheet, what is that? We have given the sheet name login. Okay. So if you want to check that one, see, open this and you can find it. We have a login sheet. Okay. Login sheet. After that, what I want to do is like, I want to get the count, row count. Row count is equal to sheet dot get physical number of rows. Okay. So number of rows that we have inside that sheet, it will get the count. Okay. So column count I want to get. So column count, now you can see that in the first row, we'll be defining all the columns, right? So for that is the reason I'm getting like get first row number. And yeah, here you can just use this first row, get first row, or else sheet dot get row, and which is available at the first row. Okay. And get the physical number of cell values. So now we got the row count. Okay. So here what I'm going to do is like, I'll be like, first I'll iterate the rows. For iterating the rows, what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to use a for loop in is equals to 0. From first row, I want to iterate, right? So less than row count, number of rows that we are going to take, and I plus plus. So here what I get, I'm going to get the row. Okay. So for this, I will be creating an object for this row. I'll be getting that row. Sheet dot get row at the index, which is located at the 0. Okay. Index 0 in the sense first row. I'm getting the row now. Okay. So this is nothing but the sheet dot get row. It will return you the object. Okay. Row. It will return you the row. Now we got the row. Now after that, what we have to do? We have to use another for loop for getting the values from the cell. Okay. So j dot less, and we have to give the column count. Column count is nothing but we are going to get this cell value j plus plus. Now we got this cell also. We have to store that cell value. SSF cell is equals to row dot get cell value. Okay. So which is located at this index. Now we got like rows and cell values. Okay. So first we'll try to see what exactly that we can do as part of this. So here I'm going to put like, cell dot get cell style is equals to. So I'm just using one cell dot. Otherwise, we can just see what I want to do is like, I want to check whether what is the type of that cell. Okay. So cell dot, we can use another one. We have like cell type dot enums we have. Yeah. So this is what we have to use. Okay. So I just use another one. So I'll be removing this cell type. Okay. Which one I need to import? Which one, which is that I want to use it like cell type. So it will show you cell type dot string. Okay, whatever the value that you are getting, okay, cell dot get. First I'll write this one, cell dot get cell type. Okay, if this cell type is matching with this cell type, if it is a string, okay, then what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to first I'll print the value of it. Okay, cell dot get string value. Okay, if it is like a string, it will return me the string. It is like a another. What are the things what we have like else if we have like numeric, not numeric. So here I'll add get numeric cell value. So if it is like a boolean, I'll get the Boolean. Okay, so this cell type is enum. This enum will have only constants. Okay, so here I'm going to get Boolean cell value. Okay, so what it does is like it's going to just check for this type of strings are here. So first for loop, if I see, I want to print it, right? So I'll just remove this println. Okay, I want to print all of them in a single line. Okay, so here I'll just give the space here so that for every value that we are printing, we'll get some space. Okay, now we got it. Now I just want to ensure that it is printing all the values from the Excel file. Okay. So after this, what we do is like we can close that FS. So now I'll try to read the data from that Excel file. First, I want to check whether the data is properly populating or not. We got right username, password, admin 123, admin 1234, 345. Okay. Now this is fine. We are getting the data, but we have to pass it as like a data provider. We need to pass this data to the data provider. What we have to do is like here you see. It's very simple. Just I'm going to add a object data is equals to new data. Okay. So what is that? I need to see that how many number of rows, like you see, number of rows and number of columns. Okay, number of rows and number of columns. Here it should be object, not data. So it should be object. Now we get the size of it. Okay, we got the data size. So here instead of putting the system dot out everything, that what I'm going to do is like I'll be assigning this value. Okay, so data of I and j is equals to cell value. Okay, so similar thing here also. Just I'm storing that value in the array format. So here also. Okay, so this is not required because we are storing. We are not printing it anytime. So we are just storing. So now we got it. But what is the type that we have here? We have to return that to the data provider. But what is that we have captured? We have captured data in the form of data, like two-dimensional array. So here I need to give this return type here. Okay, object of two-dimensional. So now it will ask me to return that. So what I'm going to return is like I'll return the data. Okay. Okay. So why is it throwing the error is like it is part of this particular. So it is considered here we have created the object. So it is not coming out of that. Okay. So what can we do is like we can just create and take this one. I'll be putting as part of like static. Object is equals to personal. And here simply I'll delete this one. Data is equals to new object. Now I am returning this data. Okay. Now what we do? We are returning this data in the form of like object, right? So simply what we have to do is like we have to now we have created this class inside this class we have created a method to read the data from the Excel file. Now after this method what it does, it will return the data in the form of like two-dimensional array. So we got it right. So now I'll simply create data provider public void read data from Excel to data provider. Okay, so this is a method I've created, and here I'm going to create a. So what is that I need to return now? So it is also same thing. It is also the object two-dimensional array object. So simply you see what I'm going to do is like I'll create this two-dimensional object here. I'm going to name it as like data is equals to what is that we have to do now? Excel read data from the Excel file. at the return type. Okay. So otherwise directly you can return this. See, it is like data provider. We are putting the data provider. Here I'm going to put it as like name is equals to Excel data. Excel data. Okay. Now I want to run it. I will make it as like, now I don't want this method to be exposed. Okay. For this, what I'm going to do is like, I'm making it as like a private. I'll remove the annotation, test annotation, because we just try to test it, right? You want to see whether it is working fine or not. Here, I'll be using test. And here I'm going to use method, create a method called public void read DP data. Okay, data provider data. So here to read it, what I have to give? I have to give the data provider name. Data provider is equals to Excel data. So how many things are there in this? How many columns are there? We have 2 columns. So I'm going to use 2 columns here, string PSWD. First, we'll try to print the data. So this is nothing but data provided, data driven testing is okay. So now you see that when you execute this, you'll get the data from the Excel file. So we got the data from the Excel file, right? Username, password, admin 123, admin 345. So we can and like now it is like you don't want to have this username password, right? So I'll show you that is like little tricky, but now instead of using this username and password, just I'm deleting that username password and directly we'll go and write the code. Okay, to read the data from the Excel file, and pass it to the parameter. Just I'm deleting this so that we can get the data. Closing this. Now directly I'll get the data instead of using that column names will not be appearing, but data we are going to get it. So you got the data, right? Admin 123, admin 345. Now we'll just delete this one. I'll go to this data provider example. I'll take this complete code. I'm going to paste it here and remove this one. So already code is there, right? I'm just using that code. So here I'm going to take this one to make this one driver as like static. See, now we are not coding anything. We don't know what is the data that we have as part of this test. Okay. Now you see everything is like dynamic. So we are reading data from the Excel file and we are passing it as like a parameter to this data provider. Now data provider will take care. Okay. Now I'm going to execute this code and see what exactly happens is like it will dynamically read the data from that Excel file. One will pass, another one will fail. Okay. See admin 123. First one is passing and second one will fail. But now this time we are not hard coding anything. We are not reading data from the data provider even. We are reading data from the Excel file and we are passing it as like a parameter to the data provider. Okay, so this is nothing but data driven testing. So only that if you want to add data, you need to add it to the Excel file. Okay, login successful. So it will close and it will open next one. Now this time it will enter admin 345. It will fail. Okay. So you can see admin 123, admin 345. Okay. Case fail in the sense now it will show it as like a fail, login fail. Okay. Now you see, we got this data is coming from Excel file. Where is that Excel file located? It is located here, like in the location. Now it's that if you want to check this validations, okay, so whatever thing that you want to iterate, now you see automatically it will try to open 4 times. Okay, 4 tests are there, like 4 iterations it's going to. You can try it on your own. I want to show you like how exactly this can be done. Okay, so now it's not a good idea that we have to put everything in this. So what we can do is like we can just place these things like this in a different file, data provider in a different file. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is like I'll just create a data provider class. Here go to this all data providers. Okay, I'll just see it as like all data providers. All data providers. So take these things, whatever we have here, like static, private. Okay, so apart from this, so from here to here, I'll just copy it and paste it here. Now you see, from where we are getting the data provider, we have to specify the data provider class. See, all data providers that we are managing here, right? So we are just putting it as like data provider class. Data provider is equals to what is the class name? All data provider dot class. That we have to just to specify that one. Okay. Now we get the same desired. So rest of the things like you see, it is coming from this. First it will go here and it will read the data from this Excel file and it will supply it as like a parameter. Run as just change it. The admin, you see that it has entered the data so that what is the data that we have 4 sets of data there, right? So it will enter 4 sets of data. It is invalid credentials. Second time it's like invalid. All 4 are invalid credentials. Sorry, all 3 are invalid and 1 is valid credential. Okay. The first one is successful and second one failed, third one failed and fourth one failed. You can go and check it in the this 3 will be failed. Okay. So let me add little complexity here. So I just want to ignore for instance, if somebody is like working on this sheet, they may not know what is the value that I have to put for every sense. Okay. If I name it as like username and password, that is fine. Otherwise, you never know what is the kind of columns that we are passing. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'll prepare it as like a table. No, but we have to skip the first row. Okay, how do we skip the first row? Is like it's very simple. I mean, just we need to reduce the size of it. Excel file. Okay, so here you can see we have a row count. Row count is like now it will take 3 count. Okay, instead of this 3, what we have to do is like we have to reduce it. Like row count we can reduce, but column count is okay. We need to have the columns, but rows that I want to use. For this, what I'm going to do is like I'll just use -1 here. Okay, and in this cell, whatever we are trying to do is like I'm just going to do the -1 because I want to reduce in both the ways. Like one is like data provider size, another one is like I want to reduce it from this particular row count. Okay, first row I want to skip it. Okay, first row I want to skip in the sense now what I'm doing is like I'm just going to remove this as like from first like index 1 I want to take. If I take one index, then it will skip the first row in that Excel file. This time taking is like 1 and you have to put is like greater than or equal to or less than or equal to row count. Because now you see, for example, I'll show it in Paint now. Why I'm making these changes is like we have a Excel file. In this Excel, for example, we have 3 rows. Okay. And here also in data provider, I'm putting 3 rows. And I'm initially I was taking index from 0. Okay. So what it does is like it will take 0, 1, and 2. Okay. But here I'm just making the changes in the logic. Like I don't want to read the first row because first row is like username, password, the column names actually. Okay. I want to skip this. So to skip this, I have to reduce it from I should take the index from 1. Okay. If I take the index 1, what is the size that we have given in the data provider? We have given the size here is like we have given the size 3. Okay. That's nothing but it will take 0, 1, 2. Now, if I take 0, 1, 2, first it will read the data from the 1 index and it will store in the 0. And it will take the data from 2 and it will store it in the 1. But here it will say that index out of bound exception. Okay, you have given the size 2 and you are trying to read you have given the size 3 and you are trying to read data only from the 1 to whatever we have indexes 1 2. But there is another value which is there is no there is an empty space in it. So what it does is it's going to the index out of bound exception. So that is the reason why what I'm trying to do is I'm just going to reduce the row count. Okay, row count. Now it is if it is 3, then what happens is -1 will bring you 2. Okay, it's nothing but 2 rows, 3 columns. Okay, so index if I am taking 1, then what it does, it will have 1 and 2. Okay, 1 and 2. Here it will come what is the row count here? We have 2. Okay, we have 2. We have to read first row and second row, ignoring the 0th index, nothing but the 0th row will not be read here. Okay, first and 2 rows will be read here. From here, what it does is it will read 0, 0 column, that's nothing but first column, second column, and third column value. Okay, so when I try to store here, if I don't take -1 here, okay, so first what is that? I -1. Okay, I -1. So what it will do is it will try, if I give I here, so it will take the index from 1, 0. Okay. So second iteration, it will try to store 2, 0. third index, it will try to store 3 comma 0. Likewise, it will try to store, but the third index will be empty. Okay, so for that reason, what I'm trying to do is like I want to reduce it. This is nothing but it is exceeding actually. Okay, so index nothing but it is exceeding. In this case, what it will do is like in the array index out of bound exception. Sorry for that. Okay, array index out of bound exception. So I want to reduce it now. Okay, if I'm taking 1, I'll store it in 1 minus 1 is nothing but 0, 0, 0. Okay, again it will take like where it is going to store. It is storing in the form of like object array. Okay, so don't worry about like Excel file that we are getting the data. Excel file that we are getting the data, and we are trying to store that Excel file into this two-dimensional array, and this two-dimensional array will be passed as a parameter to this data provider. Okay, so if I don't reduce this size, what happens is like now you see, if I take 1, 1, 0, okay fine, 2, 0, okay fine, 3, 0 is not, 3 is not there, so it will throw the array index automatic exception. Okay, so here I was showing is like 0, 1, 2. In this case, what happens is like it will try to store the data in the 3. So it is like there is no space in it, so it will throw the exception or index out of exception. For that is the reason what I'm trying to do is like I'll be reducing one value here, because I have reduced the value here also, right? So here I'm reducing the value, so we have to reduce the value here in the data provider. If I take I directly, what happens is like it will try to load the data from 1 itself, and like 1, 0, 2, 0, and 3, 0. When it comes 3, 0, then it will throw the exception. Okay, so now you see, we'll try to test it. Simple thing is like you can add it as like a, so let me just add it as a test. I'll just comment this one. Now what is that we are getting? We are getting this. So you want to read the data, right? Put void here. For now you want to read the data, right? So you can read the data is less than data.length I plus plus. So we'll see that if you have any errors, then we can fix it again. We can go and check for this execution. So j is less than dot length j plus plus. So now I want to print the system out. Just this is like alignment of data. So if you say print, then what happens? It will print on a single line. If you say println, then it's going to print it in next line. System out. Now we'll test what is the data that we are going to get out of like data provider. See what is happening now? Okay, there is some null value it is reading, but you can see this admin. Okay, so if I put this, if I don't put it here, I value like I minus 1. If I don't put this I minus 1, it will throw array index out of bound exception. See what is that we are getting? Array index out of bound exception. There is like 4 out of 4 one. Like only we have like 3 values we have defined. But if you are trying to store that in additional value, like additional space, then it's like throwing the error. So here I need to reduce it with 1. So that is the reason why we are just reducing it with 1 and we're adjusting the data. So it is working fine, right? So I'll just remove this now. I'll remove this test everything. I'll just remove this. So object. So what is that we want to return? Like object return. This is the value that I am returning. Change it to okay. Data product. So better not to put any additional things because it is reading the null value over there. Okay, so this is nothing but we have to delete this one. Now save it because additionally we have created one column over there. Okay, so I'm just closing it. Now if you go and try to execute this program, so now this will read data from the Excel file. Okay, so and it's going to pass it as like a parameter to the data provider. Now this data provider is like we are putting data provider like from where which class we want to read the data provider and what is the data provider name and what is that we have here. Now it will read the data. Wait for some time to find that object. Yes, second one it is failing. Okay, so this is the another one. Okay, this is the last time that it's going to execute. Login, login failed. Another one is like login failed. Okay, so this is fine. The thing is like I want to have the data here. Let us consider I have this data. Okay, this 0. This is like, data provider will have this data. Excel data will have like from Excel, we have like username, password, but data provider will have from this to this. Okay. So now what I'm trying to do is like, I want to selectively execute them. Okay. So partially execute, not all the test cases. I want to execute 0, 4 and some 5 or some other things. Okay. So here we have a feasibility in data provider that we can execute them based on the indices. Okay, that's nothing but it's like a partial execution. So we can give name called indices, and these indices I'm going to provide which test case like I want to execute. Okay, let us take. I think we need to remove this. Now you see only 2 test cases will be executed, like 2 rows will be executed, not all the rows, 0 and 5. Okay, so what is that we need to give? Like we need to give the indices. First one is like positive 1, and fifth one probably it should also positive, I guess. Okay. We'll wait for 15 seconds or 30 seconds that we have given, right? Let me reduce it to 15 seconds for the next execution. At least like 10 seconds will be okay. So that we can save some time. Now we see for this second time it is trying to execute. Now only 2 test cases will be executed. Okay. Now go here and see this. So admin 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Only 2 things are executed because here in data provider, we have provided the indices. Indices in the sense in which row you want to execute, like row 1 and row 5 will be executed. So if you want to check it, you can check it here. So as I told you, like this will be like the data that is stored as part of data provider, not the username and password. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can see 3, 4, 5. Okay. 3, 4, 5. 0 and 3, 4, 5. These are like 0 and the 5th row has been executed. Okay. So this is about like, indices. Like if you want to partially execute it, we can execute this one. So another thing we have, like, see, I want to execute it parallelly. Okay. Parallel is equals to, I'm just going to set it as like true. Okay. I just need to give this one. Sorry, guys. Okay. Parallel is equals to true, that I have to set it as a data provider. And if you want to run it parallelly, then what do we need to do is like we need to add this particular, whatever we have like all data driven testing, right? So right click on this, I'm going to create it, convert into the XML file. So here DTD XML file, and I click on finish, it will be created here. Okay. I'll open this, and only one tag that we need to add is like if you want to execute this data provider parallelly, we need to add a data provider thread count is equals to parallel execution. Okay. So now you see 5 threads I am going to use it. Okay. So which one I want to execute is like data provider. This is the one that I want to execute. I am put the data provider parallel here. Okay. Let's go and execute this. Now it has to invoke 5 browsers at a time. Okay. Now you see. All of them are executing. But you see that only one browser is taking the priority. Okay. Rest of the things are failing. Okay. So to avoid this, what can we do? I'll just stop the execution. We'll make it as like a clean execution. So for that, what we have to do? We already discussed about it, right? So what we need to do is like we need to add a thread local. Thread local d dot set Chrome driver. Yes, I'm discussing about these are like all advanced guys. Okay. So you need to just look into the previous videos. We dot now go and try to exit. Okay, I just made like thread local, and now we go and exit. All the 5 browsers invoked will have the URL loaded because everything is like created as like a separate thread. So everything will be loading now. Okay, let's do one thing. I'll try to reduce this thread count, and we have a lot many test cases, right? It is something that I need to check here. Oh, we did not create, sorry. equal to new. We did not create object for that. Okay, thread local. So now you see, I'll reduce it to 2, 3 guys so that we can just see them executing parallelly. And as 3 browsers will be invoked. Okay. So this is like parallel testing with the data provider. See now all this will be invoked. Now the first test case is executed, second one executed, and fourth one started. You see all this, like, you'll get all this browsers will be open. You can see that 3 browsers will be shown here because we have 3 threads open, right? Likewise, it will manage to have like at least like 3 counts. If one browser is closed and if 2 are open and the still other one is like still working, like at least 3 browsers will be open simultaneously. Now we see that everything is working fine. And how many logins are there? See, you can see all the test data here. It is showing. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Please, like there are 7 rows, probably 7 browsers got invoked. Okay, 3 browsers at a time and 7 things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can count here 8. Altogether, there are like 8 browsers which are open. And you can go and count here also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So this is how we'll be executing our test cases in parallel using the data provider. Now it's kind of like data-driven testing, complete data-driven testing, taking data from the Excel file and passing it as like a parameter to the data provider. And from here, we are passing it to the test. Okay. So from test also, we can manage like how do we want to execute it. If you want to execute the parallel, you can execute the parallel. If you want to make it as like non-parallel, remove this, or else you can set it as like a false. Here also, if you give this parameter, like you can remove this one. If you want to execute it parallel, you can execute it. Otherwise, you can normally go and execute this data provider. And if you want to set the indices also can be working fine. Okay. So this is all about like data provider, guys. So we discussed all possible ways of executing test cases using the data provider and what are the different types of return tests that we can use with the data provider. I showed you all of them. Okay. So guys, please practice. This is very important topic and we have covered data-driven testing also. And how do we read the data from the Excel file and how do we pass it to the parameter, like data provider as a parameter. And tomorrow we'll be discussing about like listeners. How do we use this listeners and why do we use like retry analyzer, and I'll discuss about like I annotation of interfaces. So how do we handle this like in case of failure of any test cases? I want to execute it again and I want to see that if it is working fine or not. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.